Hey, Sarge.
Hi, how are you?
Hey,
I'm
I'm
excited.
good. How are you?
It's been like a really intense month for us, and I feel like that frenetic sprint stuff kicking in again, but I'm
Yeah,
actually having so much fun with all the content we're working on that it's been worth it.
yeah, it's been pretty good. Had a lot of fun stuff we got coming on the pipeline. So, those of you who are watching, because I guess we're recording now, we should do our thing.
We should. Welcome back to the Read the fucking DMG podcast.
Do it, read it, like, smash,
Oh no,
subscribe.
the bits begin.
It's what fuels us. It's what gives us power. Is the number of subscribers. More. I want one of those big silver plaques.
Just add it to the collection of things you're getting, like your trinkets from the DMG or
Yeah.
your PHP trinkets.
Yep. Put it right next to my creepy mummy hand. Hold on, I'm gonna grab my mummy hand.
Oh my
There it
goodness,
is.
this is a real thing he has, y'all. Tormented his poor wife with it.
Mm. Ah, it's got six
No.
fingers. Is it
Oh,
a goblin hand? Unknown, but I have it regardless. So here we are again on the Read the Fucking DMG podcast. Of course, Read the Fucking DMG. But today we have some fun questions. Do you have them pulled up, Sarge, or do
I
I have?
do. No, I
Oh,
got him. I got him.
okay, cool.
So our
Let's
buddy
get into it.
TJ, who you all saw 2 episodes ago, asked us a pretty neat question. He asked us our thoughts about Wizards becoming a new division of Hasbro and what that could mean for the future of digital products. It's a pretty big question.
Yeah, so apparently Wizards of the Coast and not WotC, as we erroneously called it before, but the Wizards of the Coast is set to become one of three new divisions of Hasbro. Apparently, this was mentioned at a big investor event today where they announced that the reorganizing their company into three division consumer products, entertainment, and Wizards of the Coast and digital gaming. It's pretty big. Consumer products are going to be typical, they're traditional toys and games. So, G.I. Joe, Transformers, all that jazz. Entertainment will be responsible for their film and television content. And then the Wizards of the Coast new division will continue their existing games like Magic and Dungeons and Dragons and lead an aggressive digital transformation of those games and license Hasbro's gaming IP for other digital products. Interesting. So, what do we think that means, Sarge?
Right away, I mean, we can already see some of the plays. Like Wizards has been growing their own streaming presence on Twitch for the last couple of years, so they're clearly experimenting with what works well in the live market. What what are people engaging with? What is efficient for them to finance? We can see that they're making a movie again. Like Wizard, there have been D&D like TV and movie products before, but they're trying to get some pretty big name actors involved with a one this
Mm-hmm.
time. I'm curious to see how that goes. They are working on yet another Baldur's Gate game that should be out in the very near future, if it's not already out. I'm sorry, I don't play video games as much anymore, so I'm not sure when it releases. Um, but it's not really surprising. I mean, after a whole year of seeing digital platforms grow the way they are, I'm not surprised that Hasbro is willing to full commit to digital. I mean, between the growth D&D Beyond saw, Roll20, the growth of up and coming platforms, you had Fantasy Grounds finished finally releasing their Unity port. There's Foundry out there. There's a new one called Let's Roll. There's another one whose name I can't remember right now that's in a Kickstarter that might be nearing completion right now. It's not a surprise that Wizards is making the play for digital. You had some thoughts about some of their business acquisitions that I think you see on the horizon.
Um, Man, so D&D Beyond is owned by Fandom, right? And D&D Beyond is pretty much like Wizards of the Coasts, little buddy. You can use it to create characters and has all kinds of doodads and news and stuff like that. I foresee them really expanding on that. I would not be surprised if they made a play to create their own virtual tabletop, whether buying existing technology that's already out there and improving upon it, or just creating their own. Because right now, it's they don't really have that element. They're relying on like Roll20 and other services to support their products. But I sense they'll be cutting out the middleman. I don't think they're going to change anything about like the OGL and the SRD because frankly, it's like they can have all this content produced. It doesn't have their name on it, and like they get a cut of it, and OGL is open gaming license, and SRD is the system reference document. If those of you who aren't familiar with the terms, it is the license that Wizards of the Coast offers for Dungeons and Dragons for third-party creators such as us to create content related to their rule set, and the system reference document is the guidelines which you must follow to create with that open gaming license. So anyways, I don't foresee them getting rid of that. I think they tried to get rid of it in 4th edition, and that was a huge mistake. And now they realize, hey, we don't have to put out 12 books a year. We can have other people create content, say it's not really ours, but still make money off of it. Anyways, as far as other things go, it sounds like, according to this article that I read on what's the name of this website, Hipsters of the Coast, they're going to be tying in more. Yeah. Well, I mean, here I am with the beanie and the hoodies, so I shouldn't say much. I was a hipster before it was cool, Sarge.
Oh no.
Future hipster. It's ironic. Excuse me while I go listen to Florence and the Machine. Is that hipster? I don't know. Anyways,
not anymore. Everybody loves her.
No, not really. Yeah, I don't even know. I'm not hip. I just listen to Metallica all day. Anyways, they're going to be tying in more. They're going to be working with other IP and tying it in. It sounds like, and they're going to be expanding into what they call adjacent genres, such as horror, science fiction, collectibles. Don't really know how that's a genre, but apparently they're going to be moving a little bit outside. Also, there was mention of them like tying in with like 40K or Warhammer 40,000 and some other like non-Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, yeah, I mean, obviously they're double downing on what works. They had a record year in 2020. Might have something to do with the fact that everybody had to stay inside and not go out because of a certain virus. But hey, you know what? They're doing the wise thing and like expanding. It's really funny that they're just calling Wizards of the Coast their digital division now, which is really weird. That's like I mean, it's not even like it's like, oh, it's like this little company and this little, like Disney has like, we got Star Wars and Marvel and this. It's like, no, Wizards is now the name of their like digital arm. It's like if Amazon called it, like it's like if like the Amazon website had like, it's on par with that is what they're doing. But yeah,
I think it just reflects that Hasbro as a company is so invested in traditional consumer products that Wizards is the most digital forward portion of their catalog, probably.
Yeah.
And that's kind of weird because Wizards, from what I understand of the history of 4th edition was intended to be a digital bridge for 2nd and 3rd edition players who were having to grow up and go to school away from their friends and start families away from their friends. And the digital portion of 4th edition never really arrived onto the scene because Wizards just wasn't in the position to develop that at the time.
I mean, this would have been like what, 2008. It's weird to think about, but the internet is not, 13 years ago is not like it is today. I mean, it continues, to grow rapidly. Thank you, Moore's law. And really just it's a different area. There wasn't a Roll20 back then. There wasn't any of this stuff. But now we're in the future.
Yeah, I'm just curious what it's supposed to look like. Like, I'm not surprised that they're making a digital play. I think it's good for the game to be supported officially in digital ways. I
Hmm.
am very curious to see what the future of the game's going to look like if Wizards basically just tries to expand like DM's Guild to whatever their digital platform is and how that impacts the participation in other platforms, because I doubt creators who are leery of the complex interactions regarding who owns the rights to the content once it goes on to DM's Guild
Hmm.
will be comfortable necessarily deploying content in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I never have. I've always circumvented DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG with my own stuff and found a lot of success. Oh, by the way, Wizards of the Coast, if you would like to purchase us, we can talk. Okay. Yeah, I will. I will. There's always a for sale sign on the front of this business. And guess what? I know the digital market really well. So, but yeah, I
Such a
don't know.
weird year for us. Wizards acquires us.
I'm for it, man. Like, and you're out of the company, Dave. Oh man, I'm just gonna go cash my shares,
He's
and
like, well, Sarge, Laura, you're in charge.
that's it. Yeah, they can pick my they pay my price. I'll sell. It's always for sale. This is always for sale. But yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. Interestingly, I didn't hear anything about it until TJ asked this question, so I reviewed real quick, and
Yeah,
it
it
wasn't
happened
I
today.
wasn't like what? It was very like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was
So
kind of the stuff we'd expected to see coming because Wizards has been making a play for a
yeah.
stronger presence in digital for a while. They just like a company like them who's gotten burned a lot for mistakes they've made. I think it was clever of them to sort of just allow an energetic third party like D&D Beyond to tank a lot of the early digital stuff for them and just
Hmm.
partner with them so that if it flopped, they wouldn't have to deal with it
Yeah.
as much.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them just to say, let's just buy fandom. Fandom is God. It's like its Alexa rank is top 20. I mean, huge traffic comes through this site. Probably its number one method of monetization. My guess would be ad revenue,
I
just
mean,
by
I can't use any wiki on the internet without being assaulted
yeah,
at
dude. I
this
mean,
point.
it's like fandom was like, hey, like they're on Wikipedia, and there's an XKCD comic that jokes about it's called a game called Wikipedia Ground.
Oh no.
Look up the word night and look how long the listing is for the word night. Then look up the word Jedi Knight and see how long that listing is and compare the two and try not to groan. Ugh, because the Jedi Knight one will be much longer. The fictional thing will be much longer than the nonfiction thing. And fandom basically took that game and turned it into it's like, how about this? How about we create a Wikipedia that's monetized? Because of course Wikipedia is a nonprofit organization, and we don't have to do any of the work. We'll get all these nerds to like get pedantic about these little categories and create their own wikis, and we'll just rake in all this money. And, the capitalist in me is like, ah, good job. But yeah, you can't Google anything related to nerd culture without getting fandom as a top result. So
It's true.
yeah. So like I don't know what Hasbro's bucks are, but they are, I think they're either on the Nasdaq or the S&P 500. So obviously they've got, some deep pockets, and they're a big company. Even if you exclude Dungeons and Dragons and Magic from their portfolio, they've got, I mean, they own the rights to Monopoly, but 40-50% of the board games in the world probably come out of their printers.
Yep.
They own Transformers, GI Joe, all the stuff that we grew up with. Those big Hollywood movies with big exploding robots. That's all Hasbro. So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, there used to be rumors that Disney was interested in acquiring Hasbro. Can you imagine what that would have been
Yes,
like?
actually, Disney's always selling us some sort of trinket,
Yeah.
so
Hey, I'm
that
okay with
didn't
it.
surprise me at all.
Sarge is anti-Disney. I'm okay with it. I will.
I am not
I've
keen
got a
on.
year's worth of Marvel and Star Wars planned out, y'all. So I'm
I'm
good.
not keen on entertainment monopolies. It's something that really upsets me.
Yeah, but at least it's not bad. At least it's not like, I mean, Fox or not Fox, Warner Brothers. Ooh. Mm.
It's not that
Um,
Podquest.
oh yeah,
This is not
that's
the
another
this is
discussion.
not the Sarge as a movie
Somebody's
critic
gonna be typing.
Podquest.
Just wait till the Snyder cut comes out. You'll see. uh, all right. Let's. What's our next question? I think
Our
we've
next
we've.
question comes from one of our regular patrons in our
Oh.
server. He asks us, "What is our favorite and least favorite modules that aren't strictly from Wizards of the Coast?"
Hmm. You started last time, so I'll start this time. That's a good question. So I wonder if there's some that I like that I've never run, and then there's some that I've run that I don't like. uh, Some of the first modules I remember were from Dungeon Magazine, specifically number 38, Horror Harvest by Christopher Perkins, which ironically I didn't even know was by him until, gosh, I think a few months ago. I was like, oh, what a funny coincidence. I always thought it was like a really cool idea, and I've tried my hand at writing similar adventures like that. I wrote an adventure called Quarantine. So the gist of the adventure is a meteor lands near this town. It actually takes place in Ravenloft, but it could easily be put anywhere. Meteor lands, and it's got like evil plants on it that create doppelgangers of people with its pods, and the doppelgangers like sap your life while they're still alive, and then the person just like keels over like or something like that. It's really weird how it works. It's like a weird monster called a doppelganger plant from Ravenloft second edition, and you're supposed to like figure out the mystery of it, what's going on, and then realize that it crashed into this house over here, and this weird crazy guy like buried it in the woods, and you got to go fight the thing and like hit it with a shovel, and you know, like typical Ravenloft type stuff. And I always thought that was really cool. And then I really didn't play a lot of modules in third edition. I mostly created my own stuff, which was really bad. I mean, I'm gonna admit it. Like I didn't understand game design then. I didn't understand um, really how to construct an adventure when I was in my 20s. And then with fifth edition, like I really, I started breaking it down, and I got interested in game design in my 20s, especially after I sobered up in 2011, and really started breaking down the core components of how these games function. And um, I've been really impressed with a lot of what's come out in fifth. Some things that I think seem really cool on paper aren't really that cool. Like I really thought Tomb of Annihilation was going to be a lot of fun, but it's a bit of a slog, and it's a little bit more aggressive than it needs to be. I mean, now granted, it's built off of Tomb of Horrors, which Tomb of Horrors is a very fun module when we've played it. It does a really good job, and of course, Tomb of Horrors goes all the way back to like 74 or something like that. I didn't like Avernus. I thought it was really all over the place. It felt like there's too many chefs in the kitchen, and which there were. But
Greg
they
really
improved.
hates the Too Many Cooks song.
Yeah. Ah! There's gonna be like a flash of that guy, like that killer guy in the background. Oh! Um, that's it. I'm gonna make my next module based on Too Many Cooks.
Oh no.
But Rhyme is really good. Rhyme of the Frost Maiden. You hear us talk about that a lot, especially if you're in our How to Write Adventures class, as it's the best 350 page length, or like I guess campaign length is what they're all making now. So every book that comes out is a campaign length module that's come out, and it's just very tight. Not everything's perfect in it. There's some things that are like that could have been done better, but it is really tight. And the two starter sets, the starter set and the essentials kit, have some excellent adventures in them. Fandelver is amazing. Like it's well balanced, it's fun, it makes sense. Really good at teaching you how to play the game, both for characters and GMs. In fact, when I got into fifth edition, it's the first thing that I ran. So I learned for fifth edition on Fandelver like many other people do. Stuff outside of that, I don't know. I haven't read a lot of other people's stuff. I did play through part of one adventure, and I can't tell you the name of it. It's on DM's Guild. It takes place off the Sword Coast, and around the island of Gunderlin, and it's about mind flayers and stuff. I was playing through some of that, and I thought it was pretty clever. Had a lot of smart stuff in it. But yeah, I mean, Dungeon Magazine, like I love so many of the modules in Dungeon Magazine because they're just so raw and cool and weird, and they have so many like good ideas. I mean, the execution's bad, and Dungeon Magazine has a bad tendency of giving you like just walls of backstory. Like, oh god, I don't want to read all this. But other than that, I mean, most of them, well, not all of them, but a lot of them were a lot of fun. So that's kind of my take on cool modules.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've been with the game for such a long time. Because I've only played in fifth edition, I have a lot of adventures I've purchased during sales from DM's Guild and Humble Bundle and stuff. Way more than I could ever possibly read or run. And I feel bad for all the really talented authors out there whose content I've paid for, but I have not really engaged with.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say in fifth edition from Wizards, my favorite adventure is probably Rime of the Frost Maiden because I'm a lazy DM and it is the easiest module to run without you having to break your back as a dungeon master to run the content. I
Well,
think a lot of the ideas and some of the other modules are really strong, but it requires the DM to do a lot of work to put them together.
I wonder if it's just easy to run because we live in the age of VTT. So when it came out, we were playing it on Roll20, where you can just go click, click, and it's up. Do you think it would be harder in person?
I think no, because I've run like an interesting experience for me is the first modules I ran were Lost Mines of Phandelver into the third edition module updated for fifth edition Red Handed Doom, and I
Hmm.
ran this simultaneously on Fantasy Grounds for my internet friends and for my local friends at a physical table. So I got to experience running both of those at the table and on digital at the same time. And
Hmm.
what works for Rhyme and the Essentials Kit Adventure Dragon of Ice Spire Peak is that every sort of story beat is very obviously broken into a session's worth of content that you don't have to
Yeah.
figure out yourself. Like I love Lost Mine of Phandelver, but where you stop a session is not obvious in that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like
Because
the Red Branch chapter takes like 2-3 sessions to get through.
yeah. And Cragmaw's probably the only one that takes one session, but everything
Right.
else I played, it was 5 hours,
Mhm.
5 to 6 hours to get through it. Hmm.
Right. So and I think that's what stands out for me. I think I mentioned Red Handed Doom. It's probably my favorite tier 2 module because it's incredibly legible. Like I feel like so much of Rise of Tiamat is trying to recapture some of the organizational bits of Red Handed Doom, and
Hmm.
it gets it a little bit wrong because it wanted to resolve the Tiamat stuff that Red Handed Doom kind of leaves unresolved. But man, it's such a straightforward module. I felt like my players understood the stakes and what they wanted to do for multiple sessions while running it. I didn't have to work very hard to figure out what I needed to prep next for them because my players, even at my very silly local table, always knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, Other than those like highly published ones, I recently read Paizo's Kingmaker module out of curiosity because they were doing a 10th anniversary of it. And I feel like it's probably my favorite module that I've read but haven't run because it's got such a very strong premise. Like
Hmm.
I have a lot of complex thoughts about the nature of D&D and its origins as a war game and the imperialist roots of the game and how it's very much a colonialist game at its heart because it's about breaking into old places and robbing them of things that are in. So there's a lot of that in D&D and D, and I think I'm kind of extreme about it when it comes to D&D. Like when I want to deal with those aspects of D&D, I either want to go directly into them and question them at a deep level, like play a colonialist story and unpack that within the context of it, or completely avoid it. And I think it's why Red Handed Doom stood out to me, and it's why I think Kingmaker made sense to me, because instead of trying to make the game something it isn't at its core, it wanted to interrogate it and see what the players would do with that and
Hmm.
question the core conceits of that. Like, if we're going to accept that people are going to war each other, what are they warring over? What's the goal here? How are people going to respond to that? In a game where people have Revivify and clerics can shout loudly and people can be restored, how does that play out on the field? And I think I'd rather do that. I'm kind of extreme about those things. In terms of modules I didn't like, I don't usually like dunking on things. I just usually get frustrated with things and I walk away from them. Like I really tried to run Out of the Abyss, and I was really frustrated with it because I don't like you guys will hear me talk about this in server all the time. I don't like stripping player agency from them. The game
Yeah.
doesn't function if they don't have choices, and I really hate the way Out of the Abyss just gets started right away. Doesn't care what the players wanted to do. You're in jail. Get out. You're stuck in the Underdark. Good luck. 6 levels of
Yeah.
this.
I will
Awful.
say it's a pretty classic trope of D&D. In fact, my first ever D&D product, which was the Black Box from 1991, that's the exact conceit of it. You're in jail and you got to get out.
I just don't really enjoy the power fantasy of the DM in charge. I'm a kind of DM who I really hate doing a lot of work. I'm so lazy.
Mhm.
Like I really just I don't I encourage my players to world build all the time. Whenever my players have friends, they get to flavor the NPCs. When my players get strongholds, they get to tell me who their staff are, and then
Mhm.
I create cute scenes with them. Like I have the cook they named show up in the fighter's room with the soup, and then she berates him for working too late and makes him eat some soup before she leaves. But like that's the NPC he created, and I just created a fun scene for them. That's how I
Yeah.
like to play. I invest my players into letting them help build the world too. So I
Yeah.
hate having to do a lot of work. And Out of the Abyss, like it's right here. I tried to run it. This is my friend David's copy. Like
Yeah.
it's a great. There's a lot of great stuff in here. Like all the stuff
Yeah.
they did on the demons, the end battle sequence of this, all of the NPCs in here. The movements of this module really strong, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of work for me to make it into an actual game.
Yeah. I think I feel like a lot of the older books that came out in fifth edition, the ones that are like creeping up on 10 years of age, 8 years of age, have a lot of good ideas, but they didn't really like gel well.
Yep.
Like Tomb of Annihilations, like Hex Crawl is like, it seems like a really cool idea. But then after you've done like 2 or 3 sessions of it, you're just like, oh my God,
We
you're
did it.
you're at this
We were
you're at
we were
Omu.
we were stuck
Yeah.
there forever, and it was like we ain't. And then we got jumped so hard. Like anytime we tried to not be cautious, the game punished us. It wants us to
Yeah.
rush, but it's punishing us so much for rushing each time.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
creates a
The
negative feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, but again, there's like a lot of cool ideas that are in it that just don't work well together.
Yep.
Um, but I think Rhyme kind of looked at all the past and they're like, okay, if we're gonna do a sandbox, it has to be smaller, because if you look at Barovia is like what, like a day, it's 20 miles wide,
Yeah,
which more or less
I
Icewind
think
Dale is
Rhyme
like
is
that
like
too.
it's like maybe a day to walk all the way across the 10 towns and probably
Yeah.
2 days out from each of the end of ten
Yeah, and that's only
towns.
because it's snowy and shitty, not because it's like big. It's like the size of
Yeah.
Rhode Island. It's not really that huge. So, yeah, I think they really learned from that because I think they know that Ravenloft's or Curse of Strahd's are most successful products because just like in our last podcast we talked about how they're putting out the Ravenloft book because it's like people like vampires. But I mean really it's just a good designed book despite the fact that Strahd is just like, ugh, you're the grossest. um
Yeah, we did that once. We broke it down. The components of Barovia are really well laid out. The towns generate the right interactions to force the players to move. There's interesting
mhm.
things in the world for them to go engage with. It's a pretty solid sandbox that leads
Yeah.
eventually to a dungeon. I like that it's a module that doesn't go, all right, it's time to go in Strahd's castle. Go.
Yeah.
It kind of just
Yeah.
lets the party decide, all right, we're ready to kick his ass. And then
Yeah, I mean it's right there. It's like,
you're still gonna spend like 5 to 8 sessions in the castle because it's so
yeah.
huge.
Yeah, it's not like you don't, you have to open up a secret door and like, aha, that's where the castle is. It's there the whole time. It's just like it's up on the hill. Go. You're like, I don't think I'm gonna go there yet.
That
This
feels
this old
classic. It
lady.
kind of reminds me of like Legend of Zelda, because I remember in
Yeah.
Zelda you could like stare at wherever Ganon was half the time.
Hmm. Okay. What's our third question? I think we talked about
Yeah.
modules. We could talk about
Mike
modules all day.
asked us an interesting question. He asked us for our opinions on world building. Is it worth setting the stage for adventures or just write adventures and let them organically develop the world?
That's a good question. Um, I think traditionally all the big worlds in D&D, I would say like Greyhawk or Oath and Forgotten Realms probably started small and branched out from there. because they do feel a bit like a melting pot. And really, Forgotten Realms has become like a kitchen sink, over the years. Like pretty much any kind of like content that you want in there is there in some shape or form. And they borrowed a lot of from like modern cultures. Like if you want an Egyptian place, you can go to Maharans, and you've got Karatur, and you've got the Arabic place, and there's Maztica, which is like the Mesoamerican. So with our world, Omeria, I started with what's the first adventure that's technically in Emeria? I think Cobalt Cauldron.
Maybe it's either Cobalt Cauldron or Hearth.
I think it's Cobalt Cauldron. Except I think I retroactively put in there. It does start in Outside though, which is a major city. It's kind of like your typical like medieval fair
Mhm.
style city. I mean, it's been rethemed to like an ancient elven city that has been humans have rebuilt over it. But originally it was just like it's like going to a medieval fair, complete with like lute and
Mhm.
flute music while you walk around and eat candied apples or whatever, or big mutton on a bone. And then I expanded from there, and we did Hearth, which Chi and Peku drew a map of the continent that became Emeria, and
Big old
which
desert.
is yeah, which is funny because I was like, yeah, you go south and there's a desert. Well, Che like was just like, all right, boom. I'm like, oh my god, that's a lot of desert. I need a reason for that, and that became the Desolation of Didymaya, and then Hearth. But like I had all this. I mean, Almeria is pretty big. It's about the size of like I don't know, I'd say South America or so. And um, I didn't go and name every town. I just built kind of whatever I needed when I needed it, and then as soon as that thing was built, it solidified it. So I mean, there's parts of Omeria that I haven't even thought about yet. Like I just did Steel Church. I kind of had an idea for Steel Church for a while, but like after 2 years of world building, I finally like in put them into the plot, and they're like really weird. Like, oh, what are these people about? No, I think that's a fun way to build it out because like one, you don't burn yourself out like thinking about all those details, and when it's more organic, it's kind of fun because you have to like it becomes a puzzle for yourself. Like, oh, why are these people like this? Like, why? Vasco Valley. I just wrote the history of Vasco Valley that I just gave to Sarge, which is going to be our new module that'll be out next week on patreon.com/dmdave. And it's like a 100-page plus book, and I wrote the history, like finally just sat down. Okay, here's how the world was created all through the ages, taking like the desperate ends I've had from all the different content I've written, gluing them together, and then adding in some other stuff in between the cracks, which were kind of fun, and like being really like cute with my adjective choices, to make the eyes wiggle in the Discord. But yeah,
Our goal is
I'm a
just
big
to titillate the patrons who are invested in it.
yeah. I mean, I really didn't know much about it until I mean, I started really building the world in Hand of the Eight, and like just when I needed a town, I created a town. So like I was like, I'm gonna put a town here. It's in a canyon. It's like being in Bangkok in Blade Runner mixed together, and we're going to call it Orbea. And like it's taken on a life of its own, and like this map I got had this like narrow valley. I was like, oh, what that valley story is? I'll call it Vascal, and that's where the evil elves moved after they were kicked out. And it's that's the way I've always done it. I think it's fun. You can do it the big way, but I find like it's a lot of work for stuff that may never get seen at your table or read by someone else. And if you enjoy that, by all means, but to me it doesn't seem efficient. Um it's a lot of work, and you might want to change it anyways, but I mean that's just my philosophy. I could be wrong.
I am again like I will stress this in every podcast we do. I am so lazy when it comes to running D&D because I'm a DM out of necessity more than desire.
Hmm.
Um, like I don't mind DMing. I have fun DMing. I like weaving stories with my friends. I like facilitating their fun more than I enjoy necessarily determinately being a player. But some of my favorite D&D experiences are being a player. I like bonding with the other players. I like the sort of like, oh, this sucks thing that can happen when the game is really difficult.
Yeah.
And that can bring you together. Like Dave ran a Mad Mage game for us that was really brutal, but like everybody who committed to that game still feels really close because of that game.
Hmm.
I really enjoy that experience. But when I have to do world building, I do it the laziest way possible. I take like the core adventures I want to run, and then I reconcile how they're going to be connected to each other, and then I figure out the baseline racial politics of my world because D&D is has racial politics, whether we want to deal with them or not. Sometimes my worlds are just humans because I don't always feel like dealing with it, depending on the group of
Hmm.
players I'm dealing with. And I tend to work like that. Like I knew I was going to run Lost Mine of Fendelver, and I knew I was going to run Red Handed Doom, and I connected the two by sort of necessity because again, like WotC came up with more rules. Sorry, Wizards of the Coast came up with more rules
Who?
as after they released Lost Mine of Fendelver. So like the party gets like a potion of invisibility and a potion of flying and Lost
Mhm.
Mine of Fendelver, which are very rare potions. Which, according to Xanathar's guide, if you've got a very sassy bard in the party, means those players need 40,000 gold at 5th level when they decide to sell it.
Yeah.
And they were going to build strongholds using Matt Colville's book. And so I needed to figure out who was going to pay them that much money. And I basically had the major lord, who's the quest giver of Red Handed Doom, show up and explicitly leverage the Lord's Alliance connection as like, there's a storm coming, Sonny. I'm going to need your team's help in a year. Go get your shit together. And they use that money to go build their strongholds and buff themselves up so they could survive a much buffed up version of Red Handed Doom I created for them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I build it. I think things that are worth asking yourself from like a big level are like, do you care about what the gods are? Do you have some sort of interesting ideas you want to do here? And maybe what's the core philosophical question of your game? Like I came from a very sort of like religious and spiritual background. So I have a compassion oriented version of existence. So the core questions of my game tend to deal with the player's choice to use violence. It's like D&D is
Hmm.
an incredibly violent game. So the deployment of violence is a core conceit and question in my world. Like in my last campaign, the underlying question was, once you start helping someone, when are you allowed to stop? So if you if somebody's in trouble and you help them out, I usually make that NPC come back to you. I usually add complications to the world as a result of you helping them. So you have to decide at what point you want to let go of helping people, or how do you want to go about helping people? Because once people become used to you being around and rely upon you, you're part of their community. You have a duty to them as much as they have to you. Like you can go into any shop and be like, whatever, I got 100 gold, feed me. But like the bread has to get made every day. So now that you've helped this community and become a part of it, they're going to take care of you. Are you willing to continue taking care of them?
Yeah.
That's a big part of my game. I think that's useful from a world building perspective, is to ask yourself, what big ideas do you want to ask your players through the villains and scenarios you set up? Find content or build it that suits that. And then, like Dave said, flesh out the world as needed.
Hmm.
Because if you come up with like all your nations and all your stuff, you're creating lore that that's probably not going to flex in response to the players. All of the
Yeah.
most fun stuff I've created exists because my players demanded it exist. If I
Yeah.
have a very determined barbarian who's also a Goliath, I have to figure out where they fit into my world now because that's incredibly important to him. I had a player who explicitly wanted to be a cultist in Omeria that was based off of the cult of the Harga in Ari Aster's
Oh yeah.
Midsummer. So I had to reconcile how that was going to fit into Omeria when we did a Hand of the Eight run. So I said they
Yeah.
were just hanging out in
Who
Walling Miota.
who's wearing the bear suit in that party?
They haven't gotten there yet. When
Oh, damn.
they got close to it when they were in Walling Miota. If they had gone like in the Glaive direction, I might have run it because I would have
Yeah.
maybe attached that to the stuff in Glaive with cost
It's like
assist.
so you just open a door and there's a guy hanging from his back. Like, dude, for real. Can you not? That's
Dave and I
cool.
tend to be really aligned in a lot of these things, but I stress a lot in the server that world building isn't prep. World building is important. It's important to kind of create some sort of constant elements in your world. Like if the people of your primary town are obsessed with fish but kind of cantankerous, it's important to kind of keep it as a constant if they return there. Or if you
Yeah.
change it, why did they change? Like, well, the fish is gone. What are we gonna do now?
Yeah. I think,
Um,
a lot of times I'd be writing something and I just throw out some bullshit. Like, I don't know. Whoop. And then it becomes lore. It's
mhm.
just like that because it's, I've got thousands of people reading it, and I have to keep it up because otherwise the lore masters will inform me if I've made a mistake. And it's been kind of fun because half the time I don't remember half the shit I write. I have to bug Darian in our Discord to tell me what I wrote. Because like I'm like, hey, what are the names for all the Dawn of Rockty? Okay, cool. You have a list. Great, thank you.
He does.
um yeah, and then like creating, continue to build on that because it almost feels like I'm writing like fan fiction for the world that I've created because I'm like I have to come up with new shit, but I can't break the rules that I've already put in
Mhm.
place. So that's me is fun because it's like I feel the world that I'm creating is very lived in, and it has lots of little details that I've put them all. I've got over 500 PDFs on our Patreon, so there's little tidbits here and there, and like I have to remember a bunch of them. And thank God I've got like Darian and Drakian who remember all that shit, and I'll be like, hey, what did I say about this? But yeah, like especially when writing the Vasco Valley stuff, I had to reference a lot of that and be like, okay, why are these people here? What happened in the history that I previously wrote? Put them in this situation, and it's been really cool. That's the way I like to do it, and it's fun. Like instead of like starting big and being like, all right, here's my map, and I'm gonna name you blah 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 and blah blah blah, and instead it's just like, I don't know, what's over that hill? I don't know. Let's find out together.
Like a simple, like if you're asking for like simple guidance from us, pick your first dungeon, have a nondescript town, flesh out the town as the party asks for things, and figure if it's like the olden days. There's a village within a day's walk of the town. And
Yep.
then you can add villages in the area as such. The place is likely in a valley, not because it's we are a grassland species. We started in trees and then there were no more trees, so we walked around. And all of the fertile land is in valleys because that's where the water pools and creates things. So it's pretty easy to start
Yep.
your game in a fairly low-lying area near a major source of water. There's probably mountains or an ocean nearby because that's where the water is coming from to the local river system. I'm an urbanist. I talk about urban
Yeah.
planning a lot. You can
Yeah.
start like
Just
that. Just, there's a dungeon, there's a town, there's villages nearby. You have time to figure out who's going to try and mess up that whole area for your players. Or
yeah.
you can just have them leave it and go to the next big city. Like, well, we helped this area. Let's go get paid by some rich folk. And then you can go to a city.
Hell yeah. All right, Sarge. I think it's time for us to say goodbye. I want you to know that
Oh, Jesus.
I'm your Sarge. Let me
Read the fucking DMG or this
Yes.
mummy hand is going to
Yeah.
come out and
Yeah.
choke
Yeah.
you.
Read that DMG.
Oh,
And of course, like this video, that's the thumbs up, not the thumbs down. The thumbs up is the one you want to click. We said Wizards of the Coast this time. We didn't say WotC. So
we tried. We respond
please
to
like
our
us.
respond to our friends.
And yeah. Oh, subscribe, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes us feel good.
We got other content coming. We'll show you more stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Will it be us bullshitting for 2 hours?
Oh, for
Possibly.
sure.
But, that's the nature of the beast. Anyways, thanks, everybody.
Have a good night,
Peace.
friend.